Go. Hello. How are you guys doing?
Fine. Hello.
Hello. I was
Hi.
too quick again, I guess. Hello.
Yeah, actually it worked. You were slow
Oh,
enough.
okay.
Yeah. If you look on the bottom right, there's also another microphone which is a local mute, and so
Yeah, I
that
forget
doesn't
it.
tear
And
down
every
the audio channel. Otherwise, apparently, it tears down the whole RTC audio channel, so that people can be sure that they've really muted.
yeah, I forgot that one. Hello.
Spencer, you're here.
If I unmute my audio.
You unmuted your audio now.
Awesome.
There we go. Okay. And all right, I did this right. Now I can pull up this one. So let's get started, I guess. Does that work? Probably not.
I'm trying to remember if we can Zoom.
No, I'm going to make it smaller by putting it there and then doing that again. That's not really what I want to share, so let's stop that. Yes. Better?
I can see that. Anybody have worse eyes than I do?
Yeah, it's fine.
Works for me.
Excellent.
And that's it, except that I get Jerome's accents wrong. Anybody else?
So I got an email from Reto saying for the 125th day in a row, he is still in Ukraine.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, that's what I said.
I thought he was teaching in the Middle East or something last time. That was the reason, or was that someone else?
He
Didn't
may
know
have,
he
may
was
have,
in the
may,
Ukraine.
it looks like his home base, maybe Zurich or someplace. He may have gotten halfway home.
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
So I wanted to be sure and include him just so that we could have him in our thoughts.
I wanted to look like you, Spencer, so I shaved my head on the weekend.
I wasn't going to ask. I'm just saying I was not going to ask.
To cover up my bald spot. Now you can't see it.
You have a bald spot?
I don't have a bald spot anymore. I defy you to find it.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Any objections to the minutes from last time? Any
No.
changes? No. Any changes to
No.
the agenda that anyone would like?
No objections. Sorry.
Do we have the status of the drafts? I think that's probably correct.
The workday status? Yeah, I checked that this morning.
Shall we talk about FLAC, or should we come back to that?
So I think the question for me is: do we need to talk about that today to make a little progress on it? Because if there's anything we need to talk about on a call, that's not going to happen today if we don't save time for it, and we don't meet in
Martin.
July.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know what the importance is of having the milestone set on the right date, but this is obviously the last meeting before the set milestone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's important really.
It's mostly to set expectations. My feeling is if you said to me, hey, I think that we're gonna finish the document by the end of the summer, then I'd be like, wow, that's pretty actually close to the milestone. So that makes sense. If you say, well, it's going to be the end of the year before we finish it, then I would update the milestone just to set expectations right.
Yeah, I would say end of summer is what I have, what my expectation is. Yes.
We can write that down, and then we will not bug the ADs about trying to get a milestone update done.
Yeah, because
Excellent.
we have to ask the permission to change it. So if we're just a little bit late, oh well.
Yeah.
Martin, do you need? I mean, I'd be totally happy to spend all of the August call on FLAC issues if that's required or important. But you tell us, right? Maybe you don't need a call, maybe you don't need an in-person time to resolve them. But if that, if the day before you say that's the case, then we can totally do that.
And the thing I'm now mostly working on is some, specifics really. So I'm working out some details. They're in the last, I don't know whether it's the last, one of the pull requests on the specification. The thing is, I really want to have some code running and working before I want to put it in the specification.
Sure.
So it's not really something that needs a lot of discussion.
Okay, so it's just a question of pushing it over the line for you, I think is what you're saying.
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah. Okay, that's fantastic.
And having a call does act as a forcing function to make people suddenly realize they haven't read it yet and they need to. So I'm putting that in for the August call.
Okay.
All right, so next item, no time to wait 2020, might be October 26, 2028. Is that might still a might, or I thought that was more certain at this point?
I mean, it's announced now. It's hard to say completely that it'll happen, but we intended to, and we're starting to take registrations.
Cool, thank you.
So there's a RIPE meeting in Belgrade that I will likely go to part or most of that week. And then there's a NetDev, which is totally unrelated to anything you might have heard of. It's a Linux networking stack meeting in Lisbon that they scheduled that week. But my plan actually was to show up on Friday in Amsterdam. So I don't know if that's useful or fits in the schedule or anything.
I mean, we'd
but
probably do our best to accommodate you if you're going to come on the Friday. The venue is going to be in the Hague, which is I guess the airport is sort of on the Hague side of Amsterdam. So it's after you land, it's maybe a 40-minute train ride.
I know how to get there. Amsterdam is such a or Netherlands is such a one airport, one train, and you're there, right? So
yes.
Okay, so it's not Amsterdam. Its venue is the Hague. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I like it a bit better than the venue we were going to have last time because it's a bit more urban than where we were going to be.
So my intention is to be there anyway on the Friday, which is the 28th. Maybe that means I'm arriving on Thursday night, or maybe it's Friday morning early, but I don't know yet. I haven't made any. I'd rather take the train from Belgrade, but it's a 2-day event to do that. And they're not running. They're not crossing the borders yet. They don't know how to cross borders with COVID yet again. Well, I think that's the thing. They had no crew. They didn't know how to sanitize their trains, and they didn't know how to do that. And so they just said, we're not going to bother crossing the border. Anyway, see.
Okay, well, I'll send you a reminder when we get to the point where we're taking the proposals.
Sure. I mean, I might just be in the audience, so that's okay. I'm just letting you know that I'm going to be there. That was my intention. And yeah, the NetDev was usually supposed to be the week before IETF, and then they moved it 2 weeks before IETF, and it was supposed. And then I don't know. I reminded them of this fact, and they said, "Oh, I think we screwed up." But anyway, whatever. There you go. All right, so let's get on to the substantive issues. So the status was that I'm the document shepherd, and what I did is I did a top to bottom read, most of the words, except for that very long legacy appendix, which I decided to skip. And I don't think I have any problems with the document as a technical specification for the protocol, right? And that wasn't my goal to object on that. All I'm really trying to get at in this review was to identify things that are going to be problems for the other reviewers and the ISG in their reading of it. And so I wrote those things down. Steve, I think, has done 80% of it, and then you sent an email a couple days ago with some of the issues, and I'd like to walk through that. Is that link here? Original email. Well, it'll show up in the archive. In the
that's the top. That's the top of it. Yeah,
that's the top link. So So
I think basically over 3 weekends, I went through all the issues you mentioned and my replies, and I applied basically what I replied to you in the emails.
Yep.
I made them into pull requests. Some are very short, some are a bit bigger. So basically, I think how do you say handled everything that you mentioned.
Okay.
So now it's
So
just reviewing the pull request and merging.
so these things, these comments here, you've already handled this, or you think that we
Yeah,
don't need to handle them? Cool.
I
I mean,
think
yeah.
most of them, well, pretty much everything. The only tricky part for me was the encryption part, because
Yeah.
basically it's something that we don't really use in Matroska. It was there just in case. Well, we used uh, compression, uh, and it's almost the same system, except for encryption, you have keys and some algorithms, etc., which are
So let's come
different.
to encryption in a minute. Just I kind of want to walk down this email just a little bit. I could have
Okay.
replied to it. I didn't have a chance to really grok it all yet. I'll just say recommended is not um, is exactly equivalent to should in terms of
Mhm.
the language. It's just a different word, so that
In
the
BCP,
text
that's a
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
get.
BCP 14 term. Both of
Yeah,
them are. They mean the same thing.
they mean the same thing, and you can use recommended or should. It really doesn't matter there. But what I'm saying is they don't have any. There's no. We wouldn't argue whether it should be recommended or should. They mean the same thing,
Mhm.
and so what I'm trying to say is that if you write should or recommended, then that means that there's some scenario in which maybe there's an exception, right?
Yeah, I
And I get
understand.
into this all the time too, where I want to make my document kind of future proof against someone deciding something new. And so I want to write should all the time. And I almost pretty sure that it's almost all the time that unless you can document an exception, you must write must. You should write must. Um, so that's all I'm trying to say. This is one of those things where the reviewers will go through and they will ask, what are the exceptions to the shoulds?
Mhm.
And so that's it. So anyway, in this case, we're talking about MetaSeq. It cannot be a must because it's not usable in a live stream. So I think that's all,
Yeah,
right? I mean, if
yeah.
MetaSeq
Uh,
is you should use uh or MetaSeq is recommended unless it's a live stream. And I think that's just fine. You can also have conditional musts where you say the same thing, right? Um,
mhm.
but
We have a
there.
few in the document where we say you must use that if you have this other thing as
Yeah,
And I
the
think
the
that's
same kind of thing. Yeah.
and usually it's usually that it works just fine that way. If you include if you are going to drive a car, you must have a driver's license. It's a completely reasonable thing to say, right?
Mhm.
Um, uh, because it's not optional. There's no case in which you can drive a car and not have a driver's license. It's that if you don't need to drive a car, then you don't need a driver's license, right? So there's a there. On the other hand, some countries would say you should have a driver's license. The exception is that you are, you know, um, driving your wife to the hospital and it's an emergency, but most of them don't have that exception anyway. um
Yeah,
okay,
but
so going.
for example, for the MetaSeq, the problem is that we also supposed to describe what exists now, and I'm not sure the libraries actually write one because I mean, you can use a file without one. It's just a nice thing to have. So basically, if we say must, it's like making all these files invalid, even though they're quite valid.
So what we can do is we can say is that encoders that are compliant to this specification must use a metaseek unless the stream is live.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean that would be a well-formed BCP 14 comment.
Yeah. And then we can say that parsers must be tolerant of a missing metaseek in a stream because it could have been live, or it may be a legacy form document that is prior to this thing.
Okay.
Or it
Yeah.
could say should. I mean, the exception could be that there could be some exceptions that parsers maybe don't need to be tolerant of this. Maybe there are some parsers that don't need to be tolerant. I don't know. Someone that only ever, well, if they don't support seeking, I guess they don't have to be tolerant of it, right? If they only play
Or you can have some
content.
files with just chapters and or maybe tags. So usually metaseek is useful when you have large files, when you need to know exactly where at the end of the file you need to seek. But if your file is small, it's not that much to seek to actually find it.
Right.
Especially you have just chapters and tags, it's very easy to seek. So I mean that's why it's not a hard rule that if it's not there, the file is not valid.
So the related thing here, it seems like to me, is that if you say, Michael was saying, if you receive this stuff and you need to be tolerant of implementations that don't do the must, basically, you the ISG ought to hold you up to say, what does it mean to be tolerant? What's the recommended action that you would take if you realize that you're looking at if you're looking at something that is not conforming to the specifications that we've got,
So maybe Dave, you could answer the question: is would an archivist, an archiving organization, want to essentially be less tolerant of content, or reprocess it, or something like this?
If it was content produced by the archive as the result of reformatting, then maybe true. But if it was, like, if we were trying to receive material, like for instance, if we're trying to read a live Matroska stream to store it, and it doesn't have metaseek because that's one reason why it's not, doesn't need to be used, that we'd want to store the data as is. So like, I don't know, there are a lot of instances where we wouldn't intentionally want to manipulate a file, even if it's not well formed.
So I'm just thinking about, right, would you want to market the stream as not completely compliant in some way, so that later on you would know that it's going to be harder to work with? Or would you want to make another copy
the original
of the stream?
Muxer market?
No, I mean, like let's say I'm thinking about, I don't know, I'm thinking about archive.org, which I know more about than anything else, but somebody brings a recording of something, and it was recorded from a live stream or from a legacy recording device, or converted from Betamax, right? And they say, here, archive, please, keep it. And it's not new. It's not a new recording. It's an older encoding. And would it make sense for an archival archival organization to say, oh, look, I am going to reprocess the stream and put the metaseq headers in, having searched through the thing because it's gigabytes and I don't want to do it again.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on context. Like some archives might be in a situation where they have to show that they're preserving a bit exact copy of the original, that there's
Right.
been no manipulation to what they received. But yeah, some might want the additional features and flexibility by rewrapping it.
I mean, they would have to keep two
I know
copies.
I worked for the
think.
human rights archive for a while, and
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
not manipulating the incoming content was pretty important there.
Yeah, I totally agree. What I'm trying to say is, in such a situation, you might actually have to pay the cost of having two copies. One that you
Yep.
digitally sign forever, and the other one which you upgrade to the latest standard so that people can see it at any time, and whatever. I don't know. I'm just trying to ask.
SEO tape is pretty cheap, so not a big deal to have two copies.
Two copies. I guess I'm trying to think about. Do we have to have a definition of what is what was the word I used before? Not legacy, but the opposite one, Spencer.
Is it conformance?
Conformant. Do we have to have a word that says there's some conformance level or something, or doesn't matter? Or maybe this is something we would come back to and say, this is the experience we have later on.
Yeah, I think Steve has some experience in that already with the tool called MK Validator, because it's like a conformance recommendation checker for Matroska files. I can't remember the language it uses, but it'll either kind of complain about a Matroska file or say it's good.
And complain doesn't mean it won't play. It just means it's not as well formed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't know what exactly to say, but what I'm trying to say is that the language probably needs to be writers must do X, okay, but that readers must tolerate absence of X, right? Because it doesn't always exist, or there are some contexts in which it won't be there. And that's all I'm trying. I don't think I can actually say which ones should be which ones must be which. But that's all I'm trying to say is that's the kind of language I think that we need to make sure that we have. That will make our reviewers happier about understanding it, because they're going to be in the same situation. What they really want to know is someone's going to just search for the word should, and is going to look at the exceptions and think about what that means, and they'll go on, right? All right, so let's continue on here. So that was should messages, and then I asked about the cluster and element. Was that a good reparsing of that, Steve?
I want just before about the subject before, you suggested that we have a general recommendation how to create files somewhere in the file. And I already created one merge request for that. At pretty much the end of the document, if you want to create useful things in Matroska, you should do this or that. Maybe the metaseq could be one of them as well. It could be moved there, explaining why you should do it, and like it's really a good thing to do, even though it's okay not to do it.
A forward reference would be fine to that part, to say, as explained in section blah blah blah, a metaseq must be present unless it's live, and then then this part of the text becomes the normative part, and the other part becomes the recommendation on what to do the right. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so I asked whether there was only audio and video components. I thought there were other things, but there's never been a need for that. That's fine. Okay, so let's go on. So cluster elements. Did I get this right?
Yeah, basically, I think there's no empty cluster. You can have all other parts on Matroska without a cluster. Example, a file with chapters and tags.
Yeah. So I'm not actually trying to limit it to block group or simple block elements. I think I was trying to parse the fact that the block group and the simple block elements are each there may be zero, or there may be one of them or more of them, right?
Yeah.
That was all I was trying to get at, is that I think that the numbers, that a cluster element that contains 0 block groups and 0 simple block elements is not valid.
If you have none of them, it's not invalid, but it's useless.
It's useless. Sure. Okay. It's just a question of, again, this is sort of like, should a parser die when that happens? No, that's, I think, my only point.
No.
People get this kind of stuff regularly wrong.
Based on that comment, I created a merge request 609.
Okay.
That basically says a cluster may not contain any block element, for example, in a live recording when no data has been collected. So that's basically almost what you said.
Good. Okay.
It's okay
That's one of resolving this. Okay, another timestamp element should be the first element in the cluster. I lost the context to know what to there. Yeah. I guess it was the should part that I was complaining about, the should, probably. I would say something like the CRC 32 element must be first if it is present. And I would say the timestamp element must follow, right?
Yeah, we already had some similar text in other places, just that piece of text was different. So I just copied what was already said elsewhere, and so that's merge request, a pull request 608. And basically now it says the timestamp element should be the first element in the cluster it belongs to, or the second if that cluster contains a checksum element.
Okay, that's fine. All right, I asked a question. I don't think there's any relevance here. You answered it. I think you're telling me that, yes, they could be in different codecs, but they don't get played at the same time, so it doesn't really matter. So then you tried to change the element from there. And I think, did we succeed? I didn't know if we succeeded or not yet.
For the formatting of the text?
Yeah. I realized that it's.
Yeah, go on.
Do you want to point me at something so we can see what the result is?
Let's see if we left. Not yet.
No. Okay.
Um,
So I just think that we could make it a little more concise somehow. But you know what? If it's really a hard layout problem, then let's not do it. And I
no, I
know that
did
it's all
something.
generated from.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
problem is that it's the markdown to XML translation. The format that we're using allows us to have that kind of formatting with these elements, this value, that kind of thing. But once you try to do something funky, it's not possible. Otherwise, it has to be a table, and then it will look even bulkier, I think. So I did
Okay.
shrink some lines. It worked. It's still readable, but I mean, I saved 20 pages just doing that. So I think it's useful, but it's not. I mean, I don't really like the formatting, but we don't have a lot of options because of the markdown translation.
Yeah. Okay. I figured we'd run into something like that, but I thought I would ask. But you said you saved 20 pages already, so that's pretty significant already.
Yeah.
So great. All right. So some other things about there. I was um, um, I was just trying to understand, what uh, whether about this usage notes. I don't even remember where. I just was not sure about if we were um, oh yeah, because a lot of them, some of them had sections had usage notes and some of them had rationale in the area in the definitions, and I was trying to understand whether we were putting them in the right places all the time. I think that's the real thing. In some cases, maybe we weren't. Just a sec.
Yeah, basically, rational is just an explanation of why we have this element.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the definition, sometimes you don't want to put too much text. You want to be concise and really explain basics. And then a rational if you want to have some extra explanation on the elements. Whereas usage notes, it's really on implementation, what you have to do. For example, what we were saying before, like if you have this element, you must have that one, that kind of thing. It's more usage notes is more normative, while rational is just extra text.
Hello. It
Yeah,
is.
we can't see you, but we can hear you.
Oh yes, I knew that. Okay. Okay. And can you tell me, is this new thing? What's the interaction between that and university applications? Yeah. Sorry, did I get the mute wrong way? My son's English teacher, math teacher just called, so I had to take that. Um,
Okay.
sorry about that. Yeah, so I was trying to. Yeah, I got what you're saying. So I'm just trying to make sure that my problem with having two boxes that we is that we don't. It's making sure that we basically just always know that we're using. Why are we using this box versus that box? That's all. And
Yeah, usually
it
it's
sounds
only
like you
one
have
or
it
the
right.
other.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. today's the last day of school, so that's why they're telling us things. Okay, so thank you for changing it to UUID. That's really a good change. I think will make everyone happier to know.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was actually that format. So
So
it's
yeah,
nice
so
to know we can use standard strings to show the binary values.
so that's really good. I think that's an improvement. Block label, you did this. What was some other? Oh yes, I think this is a good change. From
Mhm.
rather than calling it an IETF element, let's call it a BCP 47, which is I think the right reference. And otherwise, it looks kind of weird in the IETF because we wouldn't know what it was.
Mhm.
Even from the Matroska side, and then there's a bunch of other changes. Um, there we put that one in. Yeah, so I just thought it was weird that we had a bunch of things where we said copy and don't copy, and I wondered if that was a standard thing that we should just say, and I think you agreed that we just should do that there. Um,
Yeah, I did a paragraph to explain what it means when these elements have this Boolean value, what they're supposed to do with it.
okay. Um, yeah, so do the gaps matter? So it's just you're leaving space so we put some other elements in there, I guess is what you're saying, that they would be collected in the same area, in the same
Mhm.
area of the encoding.
Yeah.
Okay, got the references. Tell me which. Let me see here. Oh yeah, so let's talk about the content alg. So this is going to get tripped up by some security guy who's going to read this. So the question, first of all, is: are there really files out there that were encrypted?
In Matroska, probably not. In WebM, absolutely.
Okay, so um, I would say that I would move it to a legacy space.
But still in use every day if you go on YouTube or things like that. Well, maybe not YouTube, but
But
Google
it's
video or
it's a
something like.
WebM, not Matroska, right?
Yeah, but actually WebM used part of Matroska to do it, and then they added two fields that we added back in Matroska, so we're compatible.
Okay, so if what I'm trying to okay, so somehow we have to say something that um that this is you. I would say even that this has been used in proprietary video systems like WebM, YouTube,
I
and
added a link to the WebM page that describe how they would do encryption. I did
okay,
a link as normative for these two fields, explaining basically if you want to know more exactly how to do it with these values, just go on that page.
okay, that's fine. What I'm trying to say is that um, would you want um, would you want somebody new coming along to use these elements to do their encryption?
Well, it depends by use these elements because that's exactly what WebM did. They took what existed and used it.
Yeah.
Uh, they just expanded it and they used some values and said this is with that value you do that. Someone could just come and create their own system based on the few fields we have. If what you mean is you have AES, CTR, ES, CBS, I think. And if I have this value, how do I do it? Right now, we only describe the one that is found on WebM. There's another version that is possible that is not described anywhere. So if someone
Okay,
will
so
want to implement that, they have no idea how to do it. And me neither.
let's put a sentence in that says that detailed a detailed description of how to do this for modern algorithms is the subject of future work.
Okay.
Okay, and I hope that gets rid of the problem, right? Otherwise, we're going to have the security people basically saying, oh, hang on here, you can't use static keys, you can't do this, you can't do that. Oh, what's the key agreement protocol? Why are you using RSA and WDES and blah, 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 blah. And the reality is we're not trying to come up with a video encryption system here at all. It's not
No.
our goal. We're simply documenting that these containers do exist. And if you see them, you know, it's not bogus, but it is part of essentially a legacy system, is what I'm trying to say. And legacy is anything that's not really well documented. It doesn't have to be old, right? So,
Okay.
Okay. So then we had there. You said you put the reference in. We put the reference in. Do we need given that discussion? Do we need to have anything other than the pointer? If we just have the pointer to their stuff, that works for me.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to rewrite what they did. And they
Right.
did
I'm not
better.
saying to do that. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that point to their stuff. If they've already defined it, then that's great. Okay. We don't need to get there.
But that's the wider question about the YANA registry, is that we have a lot of fields, integer fields, that are actually enum values.
Yeah.
And because they can be expanded in the future, you could want to add a value for anything. Do we need to?
So
Yeah,
there's
go
two
on.
possibilities here, right? If we don't have an IANA registry for something, then the implication is it's specification required. And essentially the only way to update it would be to write a new document that updates this document. And that's okay. We don't have to imagine every single extension point. If we want to have elements that can be extended with less of a strong thing. So in other words, we don't need another IETF RFC. You could, ask for it some other way, first come, first served, etc., whatever. Then we don't need to have an IANA. Then we need to have an IANA registry because we need to say what the rules are. But if they're mostly just like elements of you say fields of a thing, and if we did come along, we would have to write a new document anyway, then that's fine. We just leave them that way.
Yes, so I think for most, I will have to check all of them, but basically most of our enums are, they need an explanation on how to interpret the value. It's not just, and how it works compared to the other values. But basically, for example, the tag, the codec ID is not, needs a YANA registry because there will be a lot of values added over time, which change nothing to the way Matroska works.
Right.
So
that needs
in that
that
case,
needs
we need
a
the
registry.
But in that case, it's also not an enum. And I think basically we use an enum when we want to limit the amount of values and have very strict meaning. So probably not a lot of them would need a registry.
Okay, so I'm just trying to. So the next section, the next comment I had was about. I thought it was about this.
Yeah, there was a table with the text on both sides were the same, so it
Yeah.
was the
Okay. So you
incorrect. One of
found that
them
and
was
fixed.
the
Okay.
yeah,
That was in target type value element, I think.
yeah.
Was it? Oh no, this was in 518112. Okay, so you figured that out. All right, good. Table 32 it was. Okay, so let's go on. Part 2. Any other comments from anyone else? We have about 10 minutes left in this call. I think we can get through this. But I thought I'd
Okay.
ask if there's something else we should go into first.
Michael, did we need to talk about the possibility of IANA registry for this draft?
We did chat about that, and we don't think we're going to need one for the enums.
Yeah, yeah, that was my question. I will go through all of them, but I think most of them will need a spec or document change if the new value is added.
If someone comes along and for many of these, Spencer, we won't. It's not like you can allocate a new color. Like if you think about some of these are red, green, blue, or YUV or whatever.
Yeah.
If you came along with needed a new value, you'd actually have to go and define a whole bunch of other stuff. So actually, you have to write a new document, and it would have to
Yeah,
update this one. And the problems of adding new values is not, the biggest problem, right? It would just so you just have to update it, and maybe at some point. I just don't think I as I was saying, I don't think we need to have like first come first serve for quite enough. We don't need to have anything less than IETF specification required, right? IETF action, and that's a new document. So new document just does its new document thing. Says that
mhm.
we are updating this. But we may have some. So that's the review to do that. Okay. Okay, so let me see. I think I agreed with that. That was fine. They are not invalid, but who said what? You said this. I said this. A valid has an info and first for the first one. We had a long conversation about seek element. Okay, never mind. Did we do this page? Am I repeating this?
No, that's part 2.
Part 2. Okay. We just talked about CRC2. That's fine. Must. So you're gonna, I don't know, add a hint or not. I'm just concerned about questions more than anything else.
Yeah, there's no. I mean, that's the kind of thing that can be put in the implementation advice or recommendation. What kind of value people should expect.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether to put quotes around this or not. Let's let the RFC editor decide.
Yeah, yeah, because I think right now it's a bit messy.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's let them decide. It's a bonus for the chapters before the data, and LDO does that. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. I asked here. This was an example of. It looked like a registry, but I wasn't sure
No,
if it was a
because it's
registry or integer.
floating points. You cannot
Okay.
list all the floating points possible.
In degrees or in radians?
Degrees.
Degrees. Okay. I'm sure it said that. Um, Isn't the IANA section only from the IANA registry? Yeah, but also it's also for things that activities that we want IANA to do in other registries. So the IANA considerations is basically IANA, please create this registry, please create this registry. And then we also then say, IANA, please register in this other registry that already exists something. So,
Okay.
and there is
So is there one for file extensions?
Yes, it's in the media types registry.
But isn't it the MIME types?
MIME types. MIME media types registry. Yeah.
Okay, but here we are talking about file extensions.
Yeah, it's one of the fields in that registry.
Okay, I'll check.
Let me give you an example from my document that I did it in. Let me see. Did we do it here? We did not. So this is a draft which is still underway. Okay, so here is our media types registry, and then we have all this stuff and additional information, file extension, VCH. We don't have a Macintosh file type code, so NA. And we asked for, this media type application, blah, blah, blah. So there's a template here that you basically copy and paste this one for that.
Okay.
If you want to register a extension. But I think what I was really saying is that I thought we needed to have media type extension there. What did I do with the copy of the? Where'd it go again? So where are we? Section 5, section 15. Oh yeah, so 15, right, was just media types. Okay, so we just need to move this to, do we have a MIME type already? I can't remember.
Me neither. We have a few, but it should be at the beginning of the document.
No, it would be it's in MIME types 25.3.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So so we just need to redo this as a media registration, is what I was trying to say.
Okay.
So there is I'll send you the link. Registration. There we go. That's the right word. And there's a template from another document that explains how to do that. And so then the file name extensions would go here. Okay, so we're just running out of time here. You liked this reordering the hex?
Yeah, I did it, except I put the comments under it because otherwise it's too large for the text output. But yeah, it's a lot nicer.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So that's fine. Everything's good. So why don't you post, even if I know you're not quite finished, why don't you post the document as so far, and that'll make it a little bit easier to see what else is left.
Yeah.
What do you mean post, like create version 11?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, yeah, so I'll merge everything and post it.
Cool. Anything from anybody else today? Our next meeting is
In 2 months.
yeah, in 2 months, the 23rd of August. And time didn't allow anything else. Any other comments from anybody?
Yes, I was wondering whether Jerome could review 2 pull requests from the FLAC specification repository.
Yeah, apologize for that today. Yes, I will check that during maybe next week. I have
Okay.
time.
No, not
next
a
week.
problem. It was just open
Okay.
for a long time.
Yeah, I will do
I
it.
was wondering whether you could take a look
All
at
right.
it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do you want to paste those? Do you want to paste those issues into here, or tell me what they are number wise?
Yes, it's number 138 and 158.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else before we close?
No.
Wonderful. Thank you for your time,
Thank
everyone.
you all, and make good choices.
Sure. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.